Charles, I'm on a long-standing roll of forgetting music.
That's all right.
But do you hear that?
I don't hear anything.
Exactly. No clicking. The problem has been
now,
solved.
For now.
No.
For now.
I'm confident it's been solved. How are you today, Charles?
I'm great, Jason. And again, the art department has done itself here with Schmuck soup. And
I made it fresh this morning. It's a whole batch.
Really, what I think we're beginning to see, we've been talking about it the last few episodes, is the expertology, the reverence for experts is out the window. And it's causing us, it's only been about 2 weeks that it's been out the window. But I think we're going to start to see people go back over the accepted sacred cows and say, pile of dog shit, pile of horse shit, pile of cow shit, not truth. So when we look at these boneheads here, we have Fauci, who really should be a typical coward. He's at the back of the falling bomb, and he should be right in the front of it.
He's pushing it along.
Biden is volunteered to be, I'll go first. Why not? And Bill's right behind him. Who knows what he's doing there?
Exactly.
And Barack Obama's smiling, smoking a cigar, thinking about global warming in his mansion on Martha's Vineyard and his other mansions. And in the background, there's a story that we didn't really mean to feature at the opening of the broadcast, but this release of IRS information proving that the very richest among us around the world have paid either no tax or very, very little tax has begun to get here. It's a top story on Drudge. And people are beginning finally to say, now, wait a minute, how did they do that? And we've been telling this tale since really 2016. The way you do this is you set up your own leaky foundation. And it just to go back over the steps that are involved, you have to be able to either be so smart that you can create legitimately an Amazon, a Microsoft, a Facebook, a Google, a company.
Why is that in the letter?
I don't know.
I think I do.
Okay. Why?
Because that's the all-seeing eye in the pyramid. I mean, this is... Anyway.
But this is ProPublica. This is a story on the ProPublica.
I know.
I mean, they chose that icon. ProPublica is a left-leaning. It is left-leaning. It's the Sandler. Original money was from the Sandlers, who created Golden West Financial and sold out for many, many billions before the 2007 crash. This is definitely a left-leaning site, not a fake left-leaning site.
All that chicken money, Colonel Sandler's.
Sandler.
I know, I'm kidding.
But so the steps are, if you're lucky enough to say turn $50,000 or $100,000 of founder money into something that's worth 10 billion, 100 billion, whatever the math is, then what you do is you set up a parallel operation, the Gates Foundation, the Bloomberg Philanthropies, or something like the Clinton Foundation, and you donate your stock, which let's say cost you 10,000 and today is worth 10 billion. You say, okay, I'm going to give you this stock. I'm going to put it over here in this hand, and then I'm going to say to the IRS, I just made a $10 billion donation of the stock, and you write that off against your income many, many years. You get a check back from the IRS, and nobody says, well, who controls this foundation over here? It's you. You actually haven't done anything. You just turned the stock from one hand to the other hand, and you get a big check back from the government, and we schmucks swimming around in schmuck soup, every purchase that you make at the grocery store of any kind, you're actually paying sales tax. You're paying the sales, the cost of the product basically pays off the corporate income tax of the entity. The employees who are being paid and a portion of their wages, they get taxed, and the employer has to pay taxes. So the schmucks who are every day borrowing a lot of money for their houses, to go to college or whatever, graduate school, we are all the ones paying the taxes. And these enlightened ones, Bezos and Gates and the other multi-billionaires, the Bloombergs, they then get on their jet fuel guzzling rockets, fly all over the country, all over the world.
Bezos is going to space.
Literally with his brother.
Really?
Yeah, supposedly.
They might blow up. And now Richard Branson is having a space race with them.
But let's just
Sorry.
We go away from the lot of the story. So the point is, there's a business model which we've been talking about from the very beginning. Rather than pay your fair share, what you do is you come up with these ideas, you ride Amazon to the sky, you then start giving the money away, and people say, "Well, Jeff Bezos has given away $20 billion. I mean, whatever the number is, how bad could he be?" And the reality is he's keeping 140 over here. And with that 20 billion or whatever he'll end up giving away, you could pay off a hell of a lot of news organizations to make sure that they don't actually look into this story. And how do you do that? Because your buddies in Silicon Valley have destroyed the traditional media business.
But they bought it. He bought the Washington Post.
My point is, it used to be that there were many, many different news organizations all over the country and the world who would compete with one another to get a story out there, to get subscribers and this and that. That whole business model has gone away because a preponderance of all advertising goes through Google and Facebook and Twitter. Right. And so the ones that remain, you either buy them, as he did for $250 million, you buy the Washington Post, or you pay them off. You have your foundation, the Gates Foundation, give grants across the entire traditional corporate-owned media sphere. You get involved backing politicians. They need campaigns. They have to advertise in the same way. So it is, as I go back to base principles, I pick on 1989 because in 1989, we really were, the United States of America was on the precipice of being the dominant country in the world. You know, we had China was still
Stone Age.
Yeah, exactly. It was the overwhelming majority of Chinese citizens were living in deplorable conditions with limited opportunity. The Soviet Union was just blowing up. Central Europe was being liberated. The United States, for all the problems that we now see under this dirtbag Biden and his ridiculous administration, we'll get to that in a second, this maladministration, all the problems that we had paled in comparison to the structural obstacles faced by the former Soviet Union and China. And instead of going and continuing the trajectory of job creation that we could have continued in 1989, first H.W. Bush basically sold us out to the New World Order crowd, and then Bill Clinton was very eager to jump in and do everything he could to allow the communist Chinese, who had, I would argue, infiltrated Arkansas, infiltrated his group, and other oligarchs around the world, pick off opportunities that we could have had as Americans. He encouraged, he and other administrations encouraged outsourcing. That continued under Dunderhead Bush. That would be Bush too. And then by the time we get to Obama, we've been punished by 2008. We've been punished for 20 years.
Didn't Bill Clinton also give tons of nuclear secrets to the Chinese and ballistic technology? I've heard that the entire Chinese space program.
Right. So the point here is, it's not that the United States or you or I can't really speak for you, but for me, it's not like I wake up every day and say, what country should we punish next, or what gain should we get at the benefit of somebody else? It's rather that if you're thinking about being a responsible, productive member of American society, and you see the country hurtling over a cliff, you should stand up and do something about it. You should say, look, this doesn't make any sense. The basic tenets that animate these people, the idea of, as I say, outsourcing is a ridiculous idea.
We're in trouble now from that.
Right, you're experiencing it personally, and I think
we'll talk about that.
Yeah. So these long supply chains, assuming that everybody is a responsible, fair actor, it's absurd. I mean, you haven't been out in the country, you haven't been out outside a city to understand how nature can just fuck you up on a moment's notice. You think you live in an apartment, I'm not saying you personally, but people live in apartment buildings in these big cities, and they don't get that you could put parts on many different ships, on airplanes or whatever. Next thing you know, the 17-year storm of cicadas, or however you pronounce it, cicadas or cicadas, or those things come back out of the ground in the trillions, and the White House press plane can't take off for 7 hours, and Biden's out there flapping his gums trying to leave, and he has to wipe it, his cicada.
Have you ever heard of that before? Cicadas preventing an airplane from taking off?
Not that, but you know, this is remember who was the person? I think Eddie Glaudet, that professor from Princeton, was on Morning Schmo the other day saying that it's so refreshing that finally the climate of competence has returned to the White House.
Where? What White House?
Biden.
Oh. What is that?
No.
Did he mean when Biden left?
No.
He's like, finally, competence.
No, Trump out, Biden in, competence in.
I get it.
You know? And so this whole idea of outsourcing, it just makes it far more complicated to run a business. When you go back to the Titans in the late 19th century, early 20th century, they were the ones who said, we're going to figure out one way to make this car. We're going to encourage everybody to buy the same type of car in black and stamp it out, and we'll be able to bring the prices down so that the workers can own the cars, so we can make more and more. And then they understood the idea that while you may look at a company's annual report and care about a year's worth of revenue, a year's worth of cost, the resulting profit, et cetera, the reality is that every day money comes in your front door and goes out your back door. And if you spin that money around and you keep it all in one country, you're going to have great prosperity. If, on the other hand, you divide the supply chain across these tens of thousands of miles, you could well be siphoning this multiplier effect. You're not going to experience it inside your country. Yes, in theory, maybe the price per unit of something will be lower, but price isn't everything. You've got to also maximize the multiplier effect inside the locality. So this idea of outsourcing was absurd before you consider the geopolitical risks. You want to outsource in a climate where you guarantee me peace for 1,000 years? I'll give you the lifetime supply of weed that you need, because it's never going to happen. It's never happened in history.
Weed world is outsourcing.
Right. So that was a stupid idea. Then the idea that, I remember hearing this right before the 2007 crash. I was fortunate. I had been, at that point, retired for 5 years, and I was playing a lot of tennis. And after you play tennis, you sit there and you talk around, and there was some wise guy bragging about how successful he was. And I said, well, what's your strategy? He said, well, I just borrow as much money as I can. And I said, well, what happens when you can't pay it back? That's why I'm so successful. I always find a way to pay it back. So what happens if you can't pay it back? And he's like, I'm fucked. And that's more or less what happens. So this idea of taking people and saying you have no capital of your own. You're going to start life in college, having graduated college at age 22. Or let's say law school at age 25. What you should really want to do is begin your working life with no freaking capital and $500,000 in debt at, say, 7% interest. I mean, you don't want to do that. You don't want to encourage young people to begin their lives where they're fearful as it is. They don't really know all that much. They don't have the professional credentials and experience. You don't want to saddle them up with that kind of debt and then say, in addition to taking on that debt, what you should do is take a car loan. You should buy a big house. You should then, proceed to, it's just insanity what is being taught by these professors.
That guy you played tennis with, Charles, he had the same business model as the South Park gnome underpants. Underpants gnomes. Yeah. They were just going to steal underpants and then profit. We don't know how they do that.
Yeah, it's probably something designed by Kamala Harris.
Right.
But I won't go there. Anyway, so back to the schmuck soup.
Right.
We have outsourcing. We have this go to college and then encourage the professors and the administrators of these colleges to foist this cancel culture, that there's only one solution and we will teach you that solution and there will be no diversity of thinking. When you go back, for the longest time, really until recently, I didn't understand how people would have persecuted Galileo. And now you see it, and watching the last 12 months, at least I do. I mean, the people like you and like me and others who dared to stand up in the beginning and say, Fauci is a lawn ornament idiot.
Judy Mikovits, they've destroyed her life for 10 years.
Right. But I mean, more recently, just you and I daring when the news first came out saying, this doesn't sound right, and now who's the idiot? I mean, how many thousands of hours on television and radio and, audible books have we had these idiots put Fauci up on a pedestal and say, this is a great man with the scarf lady?
Even still.
Right, still, well, I think less.
He's appearing on CNN saying that there's going to be this Indian variant and everybody better be careful. It's like, aren't you the dick who paid to invent this thing? Why should we listen to you?
Yeah, did you hear Trump is a Russian stooge?
Is that? Oh, right. That's the latest. The latest news.
But seriously, in my experience, trying to push the idea that GE was not as great as it seemed, I personally encountered, nobody persecuted me, but I encountered
pushback.
Just like the knowing look, Charles, you stopped working in 2002, maybe you're spending too much time playing tennis in Millbrook and you missed it.
Too much sun.
Yeah, too much sun. Why just, you can shut up. But it took less time to promote the GE thing than it has to now get to foundations.
But didn't you tell me that guy, what's the guy's name who busted Madoff? Harry?
I know you mean Markopoulos.
Yeah.
11 years.
He do something that he acknowledged your GE thing?
He may have, yeah. But I mean, Markopoulos took 11 years to convince people that Madoff was a crook. And certainly, when you put people up on pedestals, because most of us are not willing to think for ourselves, we just say, well, what does Bill Gates think about it? Oh, whoops. What is, and so I think we're now in this process where people are starting to understand that the folks you encounter at the breakfast clubs across America, where I used to be in a routine where I'd drop my daughter off to school, you have to wait in line, and you drop them, go to this local place for coffee and whatever you want for breakfast, and typically the same routine, people would show up and you start talking, and when you get through all the socializing, you start solving the world's problems every morning. And that group is a constant across the world, frankly, that sort of association. And more often than not, there's somebody who is not academically distinguished and maybe not all that well educated from the traditional way of thinking about it, but will not say much for a while and then say, Fauci's an idiot. Right, for this reason, that reason, another reason. And you'll say, well, how can you say that? I mean, you're not a famed doctor.
Right.
And then he'll say, well, neither is he. And you'll say, well, what do you mean? Well, he never went to medical school. I didn't know that. And then it's those type of people who are going to finally, I hope, speak up. I think it's mothers and fathers and grandparents who are going to say, you know what? I'm not sending you to Choate. I am not paying, $300,000 per kid to send you to a place where you're going to be taught that white people are racist, that America was built on slavery. And by the time you get through all that, when you try to get into the good colleges, they're going to say, we're not accepting you. You went to Choate.
You don't have a vaccine.
No, you went to Choate. You're privileged.
Too racist.
Right. So this whole idea that, when I got out of college in 1878, I made that mistake on purpose, by the way.
Yeah.
There were certain industries, certain professions that were closed off to you if you did not, could not work on Wall Street in an investment banker job as a trader. And in Epstein's case, that's spelled Traitor.
Right.
But in catering to clients and mergers and acquisitions, you absolutely had to have an MBA, which meant you had to get a BA or BS.
But not only that, wasn't it like, oh, well, if you went to Wharton, we don't talk to you.
It was more Columbia.
Whatever. There's all these different rivalries. Right?
Well, Wharton and Harvard, I'd say, were neck and neck, and Stanford was rising then. But the point is, it wasn't that expensive relative to the salary that you would get, and if you were on the track of being a partner, the monetary decision to invest as much time as you would in 4 years of a Yale and 2 years of a Harvard that investment paled in comparison to how much money you could make in 10 years. If you could recoup after taxes, you could recoup 25 times.
Well, it's almost like a generational investment at that point.
Well, I'm just saying, but yeah, it's generational, but you could recoup, won't go into the exact math, but you could recoup the entire 6-year after-tax cost of the exercise in 5 years.
I was going to say 5 minutes if you're Charles.
No. Hard work. You got to pay taxes and all. 5 years. I mean, that's That's a pretty good rate of return, right? So today, to think about recouping the after-tax cost, mind you, taxes are higher, going to be higher. The after-tax cost, recouping your after-tax income, the cost of your education, I think it's a 20-year proposition now.
Who's going to even live that long?
Well, let's hope a lot of people. But I'm talking about kids going into college and just graduating. So that whole thing has changed. And then when I was going through high school and college and graduate school, the professors were respected, but they weren't rock star billionaire types. I mean, they had to work, they had to teach. That's why they were there. They weren't there to get up and fly around the world meeting with billionaires. And
who's doing that?
The big name professors at Harvard and Yale and business school, law school, and all these people. They're living large, and there is, if we've learned anything in the study of history, which evidently we've forgotten a lot of it in the last 10 years, 20 years, if we've learned anything at all, it's that you want to give people the chance to look at the same issue that's of concern from as many different perspectives as possible. And you want to encourage the people who are reluctant to speak out. You want to encourage people to voice ideas, as controversial as they may be. You don't want to encourage this sort of behavior of having, this highly questionable guy who actually in that picture looks like a clown, doesn't he? Epstein?
Well, he looks like he's wearing lipstick. Who's this guy?
He's a famous, I think, professor at MIT. And is that Dershowitz? And that's Summers.
There's Dershowitz and Larry Summers, and then that other guy I don't know, but maybe New York Magazine will tell us.
But again, just because I think the lesson we should learn here is when you think about it, Bill Gates, who everybody said up till very recently was a genius and fantastic, and he's so successful with Microsoft, which people will dispute, at least with the quality of the software and all that. He's so successful creating that monopoly that we ought to let him monopolize the
blocking out the sun industry,
the turning shit into water industry, and the healthcare industry. That's the biggest mistake you could possibly make. That just because somebody's rich, that they're necessarily all that smart. And then the notion that somebody like Epstein or Bill Clinton or Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama or W. Bush is going to engage in the practice of convening great minds just to talk big thoughts about how we should run the world together. I mean, that's just a waste of time, frankly. The World Economic Forum, Bilderberg, etc. So I hope out of all this, we don't make the mistake of finding that of the 1,000 things that Fauci said, 998 are wrong, but 2 are right, and the 2 are so right that we ought to forget the 998. I hope that doesn't happen.
I don't think there's any way that's going to happen.
And on the other hand, we had Barack Obama interviewed by, what's his name, Anderson Cooper last night, and I really resent when people try to say that the reason you disagree with somebody else is that you're afraid of your whiteness being challenged or you're afraid of change is challenging. I mean, look, the reason people resent somebody who, until he became president, and some would argue during his presidency, had accomplished very little himself. You can't say that Barack Obama grew up in an environment where he didn't have many advantages. He went to one of the fanciest schools in the world, frankly.
How did he do that, though?
His grandparents helped him get in and paid for it, I think. But the point is, he grew up, compared to, take Paul Farmer as an example, and I'm not a huge fan of Paul Farmer at all, but here's a guy, Paul Farmer, I think was one of 6 kids who at one point was living in a school bus with his two parents in Florida. Wow. And he then went to Duke and was summa cum laude, and then went to, I think, Harvard, got his MD and PhD and all this kind of stuff. Just because you're white doesn't mean that you automatically grew up in a life of privilege. And in fact, people with Paul Farmer's background were heavily discriminated against in Florida when he grew up, and then at Duke when he got there.
What is this?
I don't know. It's just somebody's name. But for Barack Obama to get up there and sort of speak in arrogant platitudes about why there's rising racial tension in this country and why we should listen to somebody who really in his 8 years as president, people are fond of saying, well, from 2010 forward, the growth trajectory in the American, that's not the way to look at it. The way to look at it is when the market discerned that Barack Obama was going to win, which is sometime around, I would argue, August, September 2008. Okay? What happened to the market in August, September 2008?
It crashed.
Exactly, because they said this numbskull is going to come in with a bunch of weirdos and screw up the economy, which is exactly what he did do, and put in place a structural transformation that ushered in much higher spending. And well, I don't know who that is.
It's Bob Dylan, isn't it?
Is it? God Almighty!
He looks like Bob Dylan.
Jeez, he looks ridiculous.
I mean, is that the presidential medal of whatever?
I guess.
Bob Dylan's uncomfortable history with what? Accepting awards. We're not interested in Bob Dylan really right now, but that was just the first photo that came up.
But so he gave this interview with Anderson Cooper, who, along with the rest of the mainstream corporate-owned media, is in the business of not asking any tough questions. And he's bragging about Barack Obama is that Joe Biden is finishing what Barack Obama started in his administration. God forbid, let's hope not.
Yeah. Well, but he is, though, and that means destroying the country.
Yeah. And I just, call me overly formal, but I just think if you're the former president of the United States, you're pushing 60.
He's trying to do the Steve Jobs thing, I think, to be the cool, approachable president.
Well, and he's a king of the straw man argument. I hate that about people when they say, some would say, or Charles, you probably think X, Y, and Z. And no, I don't. Well, that's obviously wrong. I know, because I don't think that. And that's the Barack Obama approach.
Yeah, well, he looks like he's been, getting sun and sleep, and he looks healthy.
Great.
Well, Charles, one other thing, we used to always tell people about the playlist, which contained all of our videos. And of course, the playlist on the Jason Goodman channel, the whole thing has been removed from the internet. So now people can join us on the Sunday with Charles YouTube channel. I think I made 2 playlists there. Yeah, we have Closing In and Sunday with Charles. And what I've been doing is I've gone back and I've started posting our timeline of videos so people can go back and watch maybe some of the earlier videos that they might have missed. A lot of people are telling me they really enjoy that because a lot of viewers have joined us more recently and didn't see all those old videos.
Yeah, I don't know if you can get the other ones up because there's so many of them.
I mean, that's the thing. Every night I'm kind of posting a few, and I got so many things that I'm working on doing. So I just weave it in there, and I'm trying to restore some of the other co-host channels as well.
Well, thank you for that. I remember when we began this in 2017, this idea of using a movie and a poster, and I think I did say to you, what happens when we run out of movies? And you were like, that's not going to happen, Charles. They're pumping them out.
Yeah. Well, but they've stopped making them. And actually, I don't know if people remember this, but the first movie-themed poster was this Something About Hillary. And people weren't here for this, but you had a stunned and almost a light bulb over the head reaction where you were processing exactly what it was that I had done. And this launched the trend of movie-themed, shows about making fun of dopes who work for the government.
Yeah, it's a nice collection. I mean, it's at this stage, it's probably 350 shows, I would guess, minimum.
Maybe more.
Maybe.
Now, there's 2 things I want to share with you. Thing 1 pertains to this supply chain. Well, you already know about it, but I don't think everybody does. So this supply chain issue, whoa, look at that.
Raining?
No, it's some construction going on outside. Oh. Anyway, so we did that show about Brain Dead Summer because I was inspired by Joe Biden's Corvette and that movie with Mark Hamill. And then that started having YouTube send me information about Corvettes. which I'm frequently looking at anyway. And last week, GM shut down the Corvette factory because they didn't have the parts to complete the cars, and they canceled every order for a 2021 Corvette that hasn't been fulfilled. I think that was named Motor Trend Car of the Year. It's a brand new radical design. It's the best Corvette they've ever made. And thousands of people, they just said, sorry, go order a 2022. Never happened before.
Yeah, it's common sense. I mean, what you should want to do, we have 50 states. We have territories. We have lots of different places with different tax regimes and radically different ways of operating. So you have many options from within the national boundaries of the United States to produce your products and offer your services. Why would you make yourself hostage to a supplier or a set of issues in a country that doesn't have your best interest at heart, specifically China? Why would you do that when you have every opportunity to build and or provide the service from inside the U.S.? It's just common sense.
But why did Standard Oil sell airplane fuel to the Nazis?
Well, again, I can't explain that, but I mean that doesn't invalidate the idea that that every country that has the ability to try to make competitive products or offer competitive services should try to do so from inside its own country and supply it to the world. It's
for national security. I mean, so the problem, as it affects me, is that I called the Ford place and was like, hey, what the hell is going on with my car? And the guy was like, oh yeah, it'll be another week. And something about the way he said it, I was like, what? So I asked them to give me the tracking number for all these parts and tell me when they're going to have them, when they're going to install them, and when I can get the car back, because we got stuff to do, to drive around looking at stuff and go back on the road trip. And so he called me back the beginning of this week and he said, oh, actually, it might be another month.
Right.
And that got to finding out that they just couldn't get the parts anywhere. So I found the product manager for the Ford Escape and I called her up. And I got Ford directly involved with this. Now, she told me that they can't build Ford Escapes right now and that this is an unprecedented emergency, not just for General Motors. And it's also, we're not talking about like some specific chip from some Chinese. There's like plastic parts that they can't get.
Well, exactly. And so this whole idea of doing this and accepting the globalist approach. Don't worry, you could trust the UN. You could trust, the wizards of the World Economic Forum. You could trust former presidents. It's just insanity. And it does make me wonder whether the COVID attack, whoever planned it, is but the opening salvo. And the first step was to get us see how subservient everybody would be listening to the experts. The next step is, now we're going to crush your industries.
That's what's happening. And people right now are saying, oh, Corvette, only rich people need Corvettes. The reason I bring it up is that is a quintessential American thing. Corvette, apple pie, baseball, July 4th, burn up some tires, burn up some gasoline. That is that. You're not getting a Corvette from China, and now you can't get one even from GM.
Well, and to put it, I mean, you fortunately don't have to worry about this, but for somebody who, let's say, bought the Escape with the idea that person was going to commute 60 miles every day, 30 each way, and now you can't have your car, and let's say, your wife or your partner, their car is also screwed up, and you got to navigate 2 or 3 or more kids to school.
Right.
It makes it very, very difficult, the stress level, at a time where people are also worried about their jobs, competing against machines, competing against artificial intelligence and other things. I mean, when I was in college and in business school, there were a few professors. I remember there's one guy who wrote a book called Energy Future, in which he and this other Daniel Yergin, two famous, somebody Stobaugh and the other guy Yergin, predicted that every graduate of Harvard Business School would be working for the Middle East for our entire careers. That was the theory. That the oil prices would remain elevated. The United States would never have the ability to compete. We would be hostage to foreign supply, and we'd have to learn how to speak Arabic. That's what these idiots were telling us back in 1980, and it proved that totally wrong. Not before, of course, their book Energy Future sold out, I don't know, probably hundreds of thousands of copies and made them some bucks. But anyway, here we are. And
Wait, sorry, there's one more important thing.
Well, that's right, thing too.
Well, so should I tell people about this? About the phone call that we were supposed to have today?
Again, do we want to?
Okay. But they declined to even respond.
Yeah, I think we'd do it a slightly different way if it's okay. I think what we'll do is we'll take people through the subject matter. And
did you hear, Charles, that President Trump will be speaking in Texas?
I know. I don't get it. I don't get it. So let's jump into what you're referring to there. This is the American Conservative Union Foundation.
You like the subtlety?
Yes, very well done. And if we hit search, right hand side, okay, and then you hit the blue link, and we're going to go into the 2017. So let's scroll slowly down the page here. Here you see the most recent 990 is for the 12 months ending March 31st, 2019. Okay, so these typically are due within 10. Let's get this right. 10 months and 15 days from the end of the fiscal year. So the March 2020 should be up, and it's not. So, where is it? So the March 2019, we go to the next one, we see it March 2018. This actually is just for a 3-month period, January 1st to March 2018. Now, if you're going to do that, and you switch year ends, you actually have to file a special form with the IRS, which of course they did not do. And if you go to the next one, here you see this is for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2017. Now, one reason to shift from a year ending December to a year ending March is that the Conservative Political Action Conference, CPAC, is typically held late, sometime in February, early March. And by switching to a March year end, you can more tightly, in theory, control your costs and your revenues and force people who are going to attend to CPAC to pay up before CPAC so that you actually have everything collected and it all makes sense and whatever. So there is a reason to do that. That's a good reason. There's a bad reason, which is if you're trying to hide how much money or you're totally out of control how much money was sent towards this thing, and you don't want people to really figure out where the money went, then maybe what you do is you change your year end the way they did and try to make it very difficult for people like me to figure out what actually happened. But we're going to go on an exercise here of showing that there are some people like me who are persistent who can go into this and say, wait a minute, what you've reported here is total garbage. And let's show you how you do that. If you go and hit the PDF for 2017 and then download it so that it's more readily manipulated.
Okay. Here it comes. There it is.
Good. All right. So we don't have enough time to take you through every mistake, but let's just have a little fun here and just, you would think we're not even to part one. We're in the beginning, the ABC area. And so part one tells the very beginning, and look at L. It says year of formation, 1973. It wasn't formed in 1973. Right? We know that. Right? This is still on all their stupid forms. They had, back in 2010, they claimed that the state of legal domiciles in Virginia, not true. It's always, in theory, been in D.C. But if you can't even fill in the form before you get to part one, if you can't do that right, maybe you should.
It's going to be a long day.
Avoid some interviews.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to work out for you. So if we go down, this document, in theory, just down the page, was received at the IRS office August 20th, 2018, right? So that's roughly 7 full months, 20 days, 7.5 months from year end, right? Which means that the March 31, 220 should have been in the IRS a long time ago, and somebody's sitting on it. Total contributions and grants, they say, are $2 million. Program service revenue, they say, is $768,800 for total revenue of $2.8 million.
Isn't that a pretty huge decline year over year?
It is a big change and a big increase, right? From 1,117,985 to 2 million, and from 134. So this calls into question, to me, if I'm just looking at this, what's changed in year to year, and why would your grants double, and why would your program service revenue go down by 50%?
Doesn't make sense.
Could it be a misclassification? Could you have incorrectly counted something as a contribution in one year and not in the next year, or vice versa? And accounting is about many things, but to be done right, it has to be consistent. So you can't in one year say, well, our policy is this, and then the next year it's that, and then put something together like this without explaining that one year is done on one basis and the other another basis. If you go further down, just a little bit further down the page, you have in the prior year, you have in theory a profit of 113, whatever they show, 565 in 2016. And
wow,
the next year you have a loss.
A lot.
Right? But let's stay on this for a little bit here. So at the end of 2016, i.e. the beginning of 17, you start with negative net worth of 309.
Well done. Well done.
Yeah, exactly. That's talented. And then you produce a loss, because that's what you're in the business of, 19.657. And so rough numbers, Jason, you take 309, you add 20 to it. What should you get?
329.
Right. And what do you see instead? 364.
Oh, wow.
So you look
I could be their accountant.
No, you would do a much better job. And so you start looking at this and you say something is not right. And generally, folks who claim to be competent to oversee math, a business, would look at this and just say, look, douchebag, I mean, I'm not signing this. It's obviously wrong, right? But Schneider, the executive director, said, no, I'll sign this, no problem. And he signs it in theory August 6, 2018. And this accounting firm that is really, or accountant probably, Conlon and Associates, which is much, much smaller than BKD, and deservedly so, based on the low quality of work that they seem to have done for so long. He signs this. It's interesting that the CPA signs it first, August 2nd, and the executive director signs it August 6th. So one thing that people need to understand is that with regard to, in particular, a public charity and a private foundation, you can't say, well, look, these forms fill themselves out. Like, I'm not responsible for any of this. I just hire this Conlon guy. We'll pay him some money. He'll put the stuff together. And if we have a problem, we blame it on the accountants. That's just not the way it works. That's reckless.
But like in my case, my accountant does all the stuff. I mean, it's simple, obviously, but if there's something screwed up, I'm responsible.
Absolutely.
So what do I need the accountant for?
Because it depends how complicated your taxes are, but maybe you don't. But the point is, you don't personalize this.
Forget it.
This is different. This is when you're going to the IRS and saying, you know what, and to states and federal government, you say, I want the privilege of raising money and offering the donors tax deductions for the money they send my way. I want the privilege of being able to accumulate profits. Now, these idiots can't do that. They would like to accumulate losses. But to accumulate profits without paying corporate income tax and reinvest these profits in the good works of my charity, when you ask for that, the government rightly says, no, wait a minute. You're standing in the shoes of government. You can't just delegate this to some accounting firm. You've got to show that you exercise the required duty of care. And instead, the team around this American Conservative Union Foundation certainly, in my judgment, is not exercising the type of care and attention that would need to be exercised.
They're very careful not to connect me with Matt Schlapp. Right.
So let's go down just to the revenue page, which is like page 8 or 9. There.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. It's page 9. So you'll see that in the revenue, there's a bunch of different...
Redacted again.
Yeah, well, some stuff is redacted and some isn't. But tiny membership dues, total grants of approaching $2 million, of which non-cash are $21 million. The conferences, they have conference revenue of $768. Okay? So what we're on the trail of trying to understand is, if you're a public charity, that means a preponderance of the revenue that comes in the form of grants needs to come from the public. It can't be from the Gates Foundation alone or from one or two big foundations, particularly if those donors are not public charities. Okay? So it matters where this 1996799, what it's made up of. It matters who gave that money.
Fraud lives matter, Charles.
Exactly. And it matters whether the people who attend these conferences, and my understanding is from your experience and from just reading up on it, is that, now this is interesting. I'm seeing something that is odd here.
What's that?
That's 768,800, isn't it?
Yeah, that's...
And the one next to it,
763, very clearly.
800. And so what happened to the 5,000? Why the difference? But if this is all the people who sponsor Radio Row and the various things at CPAC, if that's what this is all about, then the remaining grants come here, right?
What is this business code?
That's, I think, the code for a conference. It's not germane, actually, right now. But the narrow thing we're trying to do is chase down who gave the 1996799. Was it broadly distributed by thousands of people who gave, or 2,000 people gave 1,000 each, or did a number of very big entities give the money here? And how can we figure this out? Well, I'm going to show you how we can do it. Let's keep going to Schedule A. Actually, slow. If we could just one quick thing. On the subject of did they exercise the required care, they decided, to supervise this and make sure this is a public charity. They said, let's get an accounting firm, a law firm, and let's have them work for like 3 hours. 1,888 or whatever that math is, 5 hours maybe, to review all this. And the accounting firm, they could charge $7,871. Now maybe it was necessary. Somebody donated their time. I'm not sure that is off the reservation, but here you see that call this 10,000. They spend 10,000 on making sure the forms are correct, and 70,000 on fundraising. Well, do you need to spend 70,000 on fundraising if you've been doing this CPAC since 1973 and you have an in-house list of people who've attended in the past? You have a lot of records which should help you say this is the type of person we should mail to. Or alternatively, if the $2 million in grants is coming from 5 people, why are you spending $70,000 on this professional fundraising? And is that $70,000 the real amount that you're spending? Or have you gotten into a deal with one or more fundraising firms who are saying, don't worry about how much it costs. We'll just do mass mailings in your name, and we'll run up this bill, and we won't really be completely honest about how much you owe. Anyway.
That's almost never. Don't worry about how much it costs. It's like, wait a minute.
Yeah, all right. I'd like to be your interior decorator. I'm going to save you money.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about a thing.
Right. Whoever says that, you really need to be scrutinizing carefully.
That's right. Give me half of the budget up front.
Yeah.
Don't call me during working hours or sleeping hours. Anyway, if we go to Schedule A, and this is where you get tripped up when you're trying to cheat. Okay.
There it is.
Schedule A, all right. We have, in prior sections, we have shown that in the past, they said they were an organization, they marked box 10, that normally receives more than 33% of its support from contributions, blah, blah, blah. That's significant because that's what's called a Section 509A2 entity. We know that this is, in theory, not a Section 509A2 based on the determination letter, which they have provided to multiple states across the United States. Similar copies of what to me seems to be a forged letter, but nonetheless, that letter explicitly states that it's a 170B1A6, right? And here we see them in the 17, So yeah, that's what we are, or 170B1A6. So you go to the next page. This then, slowly here, says you have to fill in for 5 years, you have to fill in information on a consistent basis. What were the total amount of your contributions? You add all that up, and then the portion of these total contributions, other than a governmental unit or publicly supported organization, where the contributions exceed 2% of the total. You see that 7.4 million. So this is redacted to get to the 1223. And the reason it's redacted, in my judgment, is because they haven't done any of this properly.
So who redacts it?
I don't know. I just don't know. I mean, it's possible the accounting firm could.
But doesn't the IRS say, hey, by the way, we need to see what this says because you're filing something with us?
I don't know what the IRS does. The IRS could be in cahoots with these guys for all we know. But the question, though, is in 2017, can we, by rummaging around the internet, can we find out whether there were some big donors into this entity, yes or no? And the answer is, let's try. Let's go to back to the ProPublica Nonprofit Explorer and the advanced one, and we'll try a slightly different approach than the one we've used in the past. We can do that. If we can minimize this. Can you minimize the whole page?
Oh, I didn't know what you meant. What do you want to look at?
I want to open a new link. I want to save this, but yeah, open. Go back one or.
Sure.
Okay, and now let's. Somehow, if you go to the search page for this, yeah, and we want an advanced search. Yeah.
What just happened there? Nonprofit Explorer.
You got to explore a big, there you go, advanced search, yep. Okay, in this, find any phrase in electronic filing, punch in quotes, American Conservative Union Foundation. And this is going to give us a quick pass through donors to the American Conservative Union Foundation. Okay, and we're going to look in 17.
Why are there so many?
Because there are a lot of people who gave. But we're looking for 17. Or see, Judicial Watch actually gives not just in 19, but that's for another moment. Here we go. The Pew Charitable Trust.
990?
Yeah. Now the Pew, and this goes slowly here, American Conservative Union Foundation. Okay? We see 2 entries for 2017, right? 351,000.
Yeah.
And 1,047,250.
Why these crazy amounts?
Who knows?
Why not just $1 million?
All right. So we then have to look and say, all right, the way you report this in a Schedule B filing is you would add these 2 up, assuming these both came in the calendar year. This is December 12 months for ACUF. Their fiscal year ends December 31, 2017 in this period. But for the Pew Trust, it ends up, their fiscal year is June 30th. So it's possible that the 351 and the 1,047,258 might have occurred in 2006, right? Because their fiscal year is July 1st, 16 to June 30th, 2017. ACUF is January 1st, 2017 to December 31st, 2017. So we don't have to guess. I've contacted Pew to ask them to tell me when it happened, but we can use the American Conservative Union Foundation's filings ourselves to figure out, could they have received from one donor $1.4 million of grants in 2016? And I think you know the answer to that question, Jason. If you go back to what you minimized.
This thing?
To the first page, to the summary of revenues, what do you see there for contributions and grants for 2016? 1,117,985. Is that less than 1.4 million?
It is.
Right. So that means if the Pew money did go to ACUF,
Someplace else.
It likely, in theory, would have gone all in 2017. So if we go back to Schedule A again, and we see total grants of $2 million, we know that $1.4 million came from one person, from Pew.
Right.
Okay? If Pew's forms are correct, and if ACUS forms are correct, leaving only $600,000 in 2017, right?
Yeah.
So go back to the list of donors if you can. So we're on the hunt now for $600,000. We go back to the preceding page.
We want to find 2017. Oh, no, right. This is this.
Yeah, okay. And we look at...
We could just do this. 2017. Here's all the 2017s.
Okay, so we look at the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, and what do we see in Form 990 Schedule 1? Slow. You're going to go this down a ways. There's quite a few they give to.
Yeah.
So you can keep, it's probably 30 if past this. I can see it on the left while you're doing it. Keep going. All right. Next section.
Look at this. American Academy of Arts and Sciences. That's interesting, isn't it?
Yep. All right. American Conservative Union Foundation. 681,000. We've already got more in 2017 than they declared, and we're not finished. Okay? 681 plus 14 is more than they declared out of two people. And if two people are responsible for more than they declared, what happened to the other money?
I don't know.
Which could be why Matt Schlapp and others don't want to speak to us.
And not only that, they get nervous when I call there. It's kind of funny. Slightly.
So let's keep going. So we've already identified with two donors. Let's go back to that summary of the donors that you highlighted, 17. And go up the page a little bit. Yeah, there's not Brickell. All right, let's punch in, because a further thing that happens is they file...
Shell Oil.
Yeah, let's see what they say they gave him. I don't think it's a lot of money.
Why are they giving...
You don't need to. I've done it before. This is a small matching contribution. Let's go into the advanced search again.
Okay.
And let's punch in, just into the name. It could actually be the normal, well, either one. You could punch in here, let's see, Bradley Foundation.
Like that?
Yeah. And you'll get the Harry and Lindy Bradley Foundation, and it's in Wisconsin. Maybe you have to punch in Harry, because you got too many. It's such a common name. I think it's Harry.
Coach Harry Bradley Foundation?
No, it's Harry and Lindy, Linde.
Nope. Not here.
No, it was. Here it is. Lynde.
Ah.
Okay, my fault. So now let's look at 17 and see how much money they may have given. You'll see this is a very big...
PF or T?
PF. Now, the crowd can be helpful here. You're going to want to download it because this is a very long file, 84 pages. This is a big operation. It's given away apparently $1 billion or more.
Who is Harry?
They created this company. They're long dead, these two, the two brothers. They created something called Allen Bradley, which is a big company that was sold, I think, for $1 billion or thereabouts. But you're going to have to go like halfway through the document or more to get to the list of grants.
That looks like it.
Let's see. No, that's what they own. It starts to be here, I think. Okay, so we first look here. This is grants for the year. Yeah. You look here, American Conservative Union Foundation, and you won't find it alphabetically, right? It's American should be right there. It's not. So you might give up if you were inclined to give up. But if you're a persistent fuss bucket like me, you will look under the American Conservative Foundation. So keep going.
Pretty smart. You know their tricks, Charles.
I don't know all their tricks, but I know some of them.
We're learning them.
Let's see.
Witherspoon.
DH.
Institute. 3.
It should be there. I saw it. Can you search the document?
I can, but it's going to take a minute for me to get it ready to do that.
Then don't. I see there's a search thing there, right?
Right, but
I think you just keep going. It's.
Let me just do something real quick, and then we will be able to search it here. Where is the? I may not have the correct version here to do. Yeah, I don't know. What should we do?
Keep going. See, it's sort of a mixture.
A lot of money given to the University of Chicago.
Yeah.
And the University of Wisconsin, where they're doing gain-of-function research on Spanish flu.
All right, well, I guess you have to go back up slowly.
Now, wait a minute. There's normally a way to create PDF, edit PDF.
Let's just go. Here's P.
What does that say? I think I just haven't added it here. No, you know what? I haven't installed the proper version. Sorry, Charles. What would you like to do with this?
I'd like to go back to the list of grants.
Yeah.
And, it's a pity we can't search.
I can do it, but I just need to do a little bit of wrangling here for
Let's keep going down this, up that way, and maybe it'll pop, because I definitely saw it.
But it's interesting how they've hidden it here.
The Howard, maybe it's getting closer. The Heritage Foundation, the Fund for American Studies, the
American Studies Center right there. There it is.
350,000. So we're already 350,000 more. That says the date of the grant is July 5th. We've already identified 3 donors have given more than the entire amount of money they claimed. All right. Then remember that thing I said that you have it in the top of the list?
What thing?
This thing. Good Ventures.
Oh, yeah.
So if we look at that, now this is something. There's Good Ventures, and there's also the Open Philanthropy Project. Now, these are young people in their 30s, one of whom has made $20 billion off of Facebook or whatever. And it's actually, they're left-leaning people, but they got together and they said, we shouldn't like this American Conservative Union, but let's support them with this Center for Criminal Justice Reform. And to be fair to these people, they do give us information. They show that they gave $212,000 in 2018. And if you go down the page, you'll see next, let's see. Oh,
next grant.
Yeah, they have here, July 2017. They also gave $206,000 in July of 2017. So we now have $600,000 more in grants from 4 people in 1 year, and we've done this in less than half an hour.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Right? Now, imagine what we could do if we systematically went through every donor in the past that is known. We have a list, a Schedule B for 2001. We have a Schedule B for 2009. We have, I think, a Schedule B for 2010. And we tried to go through all this. We'd say, more money has, by the donors, gone towards this entity than you say you collected.
Where's the money, Lebowski?
Right. And then you look and you say, now maybe this guy is a fantastic person, Pat Nolan, but if this is the center, part of the American Conservative Union Foundation. If we Google Pat...
Wait a minute, but here's this guy.
I know.
So what's that about?
Well, we're going to punch in each name. Let's do Pat Nolan first and Pardon.
Oh, I see where we're going.
Right.
Oh, my God.
Right.
So Pat Nolan.
And Pardon. And
Wow.
again, I'm very sympathetic that you put in quotes. Yeah, there you go.
There it is. It's the first thing that comes back with the LA Times here.
Yeah, so he's taken down by...
I pay for this LA Times, and they still give us ads.
Taken down by FBI's shrimp scam probe.
What the hell is that?
I don't know. But I think he was originally sentenced to how many months in prison?
33?
Yep.
Shrimp sandwich. Was he
Oh, yeah, see?
Wow.
Served 26 months of a 33-month prison sentence.
All right.
All right. So if you're going to have a criminal justice reform initiative in the American Conservative Union Foundation...
Staff it with criminals?
Well, you want it... Well, I mean, look, he served time in prison and he was pardoned, right? Okay? So, I mean... Maybe there are extenuating circumstances, but you say, what we're going to do here, because we're so upstanding, is we're going to put the special initiative for which the American Conservative Union Foundation has no legal authority to prosecute, but we'll set up this initiative, we'll staff it with this guy, let him run it, and then the other guy, David Safavian, he must be really good and lily white, because you wouldn't want to have, your criminal justice reform thing staffed by 2 pardoned criminals, would you?
Well, I wouldn't.
Well, let's see if what pops up when we punch in David Safavian's name and pardon.
Yeah, it seems to be
another guy pardoned.
Right.
And again, this is where it's one thing to run around and let the people who are in theory running this American Conservative Union Foundation, they could say. That Matt Schlapp isn't taking a salary. And look, this is no minor situation. David Safavian served nearly a year in prison for lying about his interactions with lobbyist Jack Abramoff. Jack Abramoff is a notorious fellow, right? And so before I wanted to give somebody like that a second chance, I would ask myself, are there rules that pertain especially to public charities that involve having to do filings around the country where you have to explain anybody who may have had a bad interaction with the law, particularly if you were convicted of a felony and pardoned, two separate people. You wouldn't want to say, well, the only people who collect a full-time salary here are the 2 former felons.
Is that right?
Well, I think if we go back into the 2017 990, let's take a look at how many salaries are paid.
Wow. And also they have to CC my emails to that guy, apparently. Let's see. I think we have it.
You got to... Yeah, that's the one. If you go back up, let's see. Let's go and look at the... Slowly, Jason. Okay, here's Daniel Schneider gets compensation from a related organization. That would be the American Conservative Union.
Matt Schlapp gets 0?
Yeah.
That's like that lady. I don't get a salary.
Right, exactly. Here are the independent contractors. Now, Gaylord National Harbor Hotel, a conference facility, I think I saw somewhere else that Safavian and, let's maybe go to the first page, that Safavian and Nolan
I should OCR all these documents so we can search them.
Yeah.
Is this more? They're all getting 0.
Yeah, except I think they may be being paid by the ACU, or they may be contractors.
It's not there, huh?
Well, keep going up that way. You'll see a list of all. You want to go to part 9, part 1. Go page 9, 10. Seven. That's 8. And 9 is the next page. Okay. Do we see any salaries paid to anybody? This is it here. Other salaries and wages. Nobody's being paid anything. So how are, who is Nolan working for? Who is Safavian working for? If the American Conservative Union Foundation is actually taking this money from Good Ventures and the Open Philanthropy Project, how do they take the money and who gets paid how to do this work of the Criminal Justice Reform Center?
What do they do? Just give the money to reformed criminals?
I think the idea was that they were, and now that I look at this, why is there such high travel expense?
They love that because 200 and whatever thousand. That's very Clinton-ish of them.
Yeah.
Travel, because that would include hotels,
right,
and meals, right?
Right. So this what we're doing here is just taking their filings, which are out there in the public domain, and using a little bit of elbow grease and saying there's something seriously bad wrong here. That donors are claiming either the donors are inventing these grants and didn't make them, which is possible, or money is disappearing, or they're not accounting properly for maybe the donor gave them 3 years of money in advance and they're not handling this properly, either the donor or the recipient, properly in the way they account for a multi-year inflow that occurs in 1 year. So, it's possible that maybe they can make this...
Well, they can't return phone calls. Maybe they can't count either.
Yeah. And so, again, if you've got the American Conservative Union, which is a sister organization, there are many examples, not for today, but there are many examples where one or both of the brother-sister organizations lie about the relationship to one another in crucial years where they're sending money back and forth to each other and nobody can keep track of where the money actually went. So it's understandable that you would lie because you wouldn't want to upset people with the truth, as you have been known to say. So
I've been known to hear that, actually.
Yeah, right, exactly. So furthermore, another thing to ask yourself here is when you're thinking about numbers, you're going to ask yourself, is there actually an organization here? It has no employees. It can't do its accounting. It manages to live for many years with a negative net worth, which is virtually impossible to do, suggesting that it is dependent on some other organization
or something.
The American Conservative Union. So the relationship that the American Conservative Union has with the American Conservative Union Foundation, the American Conservative Union Foundation in later years is paying large fees to back up to the American Conservative Union, which are not explained. What's the basis? This year, they don't seem to be paying big management fees, but in other years, they do. And the basis for charging those fees, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to say, we've chosen to have no employees. Maybe we should have our own employees so that we don't get raped and pillaged by people who are charging us these big fees. What is so complicated about running, if all you're going to do is run one conference out of this American Conservative Union Foundation, why don't you have at least one or maybe 2 or 3 part-time employees so that you don't have to be hostage to the American Conservative Union itself? And therefore, you also will have a better ability to keep track of what actually happened to the money. Why don't you have a budget? You're going to spend $214,000, $15,000 on travel, but $1,900 on legal. It just...
Well, they were traveling around trying to find a lawyer.
Right, exactly.
Find the best price.
Oh, yeah, here's the management fee. Look here. It says, fees for services, management. Let's not put anything down here because we wouldn't want to alarm people. You're going to spend $1 million on management.
Wow, holy cow. So why are they filling that in rather than just writing it up above?
Well, that's another standard trick. If you don't want to upset people by putting it in the category here, let's see, out of 2.8 million total expenses, we're going to pay some other schmuck in Schmuck Soup Land.
That's crazy.
It's just you wouldn't do that if you were really running this properly.
Unless you're the one getting the million. Don't they? There's a guy answering the phone. Is he a volunteer, maybe?
Well, they answer the phone. You call the American Conservative Union Foundation, and they answer at American Conservative Union.
It's the same guy.
It's the same, same, yeah. Even though they had at one point adjacent offices, and then they switched. And here again, this line 21, payments to affiliates, should be filled in.
Who are they affiliated with?
American Conservative Union is certainly an affiliate. You see, so generally speaking, I think the IRS is in the SEC, Department of Justice role of all we do when it comes to foundations is we watch porn. And so we're too busy looking at it.
Wife, if it's the SEC.
Well, the point is, there's just glaring discrepancies. The changes in net assets reported in the income statement line does not foot with the balance sheet. Obvious mistakes like the management fee, obvious mistakes concerning the revenues. And as we've said before about the Clinton Foundation, the way the accounting profession works in general, to the extent it does work, is people say, look, give us a breakdown of your revenues. And if you can't do that, if you can't keep track of who your actual customers are, chances are nothing else will be right about your financial statement, right? Because if you don't know, revenues, I don't know. Why would I care about those?
Right.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the number one thing when you're running a business is keeping track of the money.
Right. And so I think part of the reason that Schlapp and company are reluctant to engage on this is they don't...
They know that you know what's up.
And this is really, and I gave the same advice to Barack Obama's foundation, to their general counsel. I just said, listen, give up. I mean, you haven't raised that much money.
How'd they respond to that, by the way?
They were very cordial, actually.
Most people usually, they're like, yeah, you're right, I'll just give up.
Well, no, I explained it to them. I said, the foundation you claim to get the library building up and running is going to cost maybe $500 million. All you've raised is like $6 million or $10 million or whatever it is. Just wind this thing up. Give the money back.
Nobody in Chicago has any idea where that thing is breaking ground.
And that's the first thing you learn, actually, if you've ever lost money. And if you haven't lost money, you probably shouldn't be carrying on big projects with anybody, because you're eventually going to lose money, and you haven't learned anything about how to live through losing money.
You want to hear a funny film production story along those lines? This was told to me by a camera assistant. So back when things were shot on film, you had to load the film into a magazine that would go on the camera, and that's got to be done in the dark because the film is light sensitive. So there's this bag that you stick your arms in, and in a dark room, some of the film goes in the bag, and it's this light sealed bag. And I was told by an AC, I never experienced this personally, assistant cameraman, Martin Scorsese will not allow an AC on set who has not fogged a roll of film, because doing it means you've just ruined the day when you're unloading the already exposed film. And that feeling of everybody here and all the money spent today, this little pissant second or third assistant just blew the day. If you haven't had that, get off my set. Because you're going to have your first,
exactly.
Not here.
Right, exactly. And so back on the Barack Obama Foundation, I continue to believe that it is very important for the people who are living and those who will follow us to have access to all of the records of the Obama administration and the Bush and other administrations in these presidential libraries, because we need to be able to study, learn from the mistakes, and if in the case of those administrations that have had successes, understand why they were successful, where they won, where they lost. You need to study all that stuff. And so I want there to be a Barack Obama Foundation, just as I want there to be George W. Bush Foundation and other. But I want all the shit in there. I don't want all the damaging stuff. We'll just incinerate that.
Right.
We'll leave behind in these
like
fables,
paintings and weird sculptures of demons,
Easter Island heads.
Yeah,
all that stuff. No, so if you've got a $500 million budget, you've only raised $6 million and you've blown it.
Did they do that?
Well, they didn't listen to me. They raised hundreds of millions of dollars, and the entity in which, in theory, is going to have disposition of Barack Obama's legacy, I think, well, unless there's some shady backdoor deal already done, so that it'll never
could that possibly happen?
I don't know.
What's the likelihood of that?
Yeah. So I don't know how much time we have. We have a few minutes.
Oh, the clock fell on the floor and I forgot to put it on there. We have all the time you need.
Well, why don't we do a little bit on the EcoHealth Alliance, including that Zero Hedge story?
Sure.
We landed on Peter Daszak really by accident and EcoHealth.
That's Zero Hedge?
Yeah.
There he is.
Yeah. So this is...
They really want the...
he's on tape saying his colleagues in China are developing killer viruses. This guy. This is
what?
Yeah.
He says that?
Yeah, on tape. And
I didn't hear that part.
in 2016.
Why would he say that?
Because he's an idiot.
Wow. Colleagues in China manipulating He says they're creating killer viruses? Wow. Then when you get a sequence...
You insert the spike proteins from these viruses, see if they bind to human cells. You end up with a small number of viruses that really do look like killers, says this idiot.
Why would you want to do that?
Why would you want... I actually think it is a great thing to protect species that are facing extinction. I really think that is a good thing. I was shocked.
Humans?
Yeah. Well, yeah. But I don't think we're facing extinction yet.
Well,
yeah.
Have you been outside?
Yeah, but, I remember the first time I was in a game park in Africa was in 1977. And I remember being... I expected to see animals teeming all over the place, and there just weren't back in 1977.
Because they were getting shot so much? Poached?
Yeah, humans taking over more and more of the territory, the poaching and all that kind of stuff. There were a lot of animals in certain places, but the ones you wanted to see, there weren't quite as many of them. And so this guy, Daszak, started out in life as a zoologist. And, his specialty is more, in theory, protecting these animals. What the hell is he doing overseeing in EcoHealth Alliance experiments that are trying to take viruses that in theory naturally occur and turn them into things that are killers, as he describes them? How does that make any sense? Who in the United States actually
wants to pay for that?
Right. Why are our tax dollars paying for it? On the one hand, we have Schmuck soup guys. We have, Bezos and Gates and Buffett and all these people setting up their foundations so they don't have to pay taxes on their billions.
Right.
Right. And on the other hand, we schmucks in the soup are letting people like this Daszak, who was born in England.
Peter Ballsack.
Ballsack. Yeah.
I thought he was... Oh, we don't want to talk about that yet.
We can.
Well, I thought he was born in Ukraine.
He was born in England of a Ukrainian and English parents. So we're on the hunt to try to understand exactly what are his origins. But the point is, when you look at his background and then you look at this EcoHealth Alliance, you ask yourself, how in the hell is it getting so much money? And what kind of checks were done on this Daszak guy? Who hired him? And let's go into the Nonprofit Explorer and just see if there are common theme problems that we could find in this.
Probably Fauci hired him.
Yeah, just the normal landing. Yeah. You can find a nonprofit by down here. EcoHealth Alliance.
Is it EcoHealth, one word like that?
Yeah, and then Alliance. There you go. Now let's, for the hell of it, or as younger members of my family once said for shits and giggles, let's look in 2009. And
they're at least current, huh?
Well, we've been through this. They're not current. They just have there's the audit, not the. Let's go back to 2009 and see what we have when you punch that 990. What name pops up here? Does it say?
Yeah,
it's right there.
It's just so difficult to navigate when it's.
Okay, you could download it. Yeah. Wildlife Trust Inc.
Oh, right.
They just changed the name. The name and the address of the principal officer, Peter Daszak, PhD. And again, I know, and this is doing business as the Wildlife Trust.
It's doing business as something else, but there's nothing, shouldn't there be something written here?
Yeah. Well, they changed their name by changing their articles, but they didn't do this properly. So I look askance at people who put in PhD into their title. just because my father refuses to do it. And my father believes that the only person who should call himself a doctor is a medical doctor. It's just and he's a PhD in nuclear
isn't he
physics.
supposed to have the capital D? He didn't even spell it right.
Well, it's PAH, dunce. But here you see very clearly that this was called the Wildlife Trust.
Pretty bad if you misspell PhD.
And here we have, let's look at the test of can they get this right? Their net worth in 1 year is something, and is it right the next year? The net worth, they begin is in 22 there, it's 4.6 million. Well, they lose $133,000. $133,000, Jason. And
yeah,
it's wrong.
Right. How is 133?
It isn't. But here he puts in Peter Daszak, PhD and president. Casey, did I mention I'm a PhD?
No.
Yeah, I'm not. Anyway, so I can't get that right. Not so good with this stuff. You see, in the organization's mission, we empower local conservation scientists worldwide to protect nature and safeguard ecosystems and human health.
By making terrible viruses.
And human health. This is not what the original...
They're doing the opposite.
Right. Yeah. Wildlife Trust's health research spans the U.S. and more than 20 countries worldwide to develop... You got to throw in the word sustainable, right? Sustainable sex workers, sustainable drug addicts, sustainable criminals. You just put that sustainable in there, that's covered.
Well, sustainable criminals is when you hire your family into the criminal operation so that they'll keep it quiet for the next 40 years.
So here we look at 4A, first project.
Wildlife
Do it
Trust.
in the Fauci accent.
Wildlife Trust continues to monitor bat populations in China and other Southeast Asian nations for SARS coronavirus, the cause of the 2001 global pandemic, to prevent future spillover events. And the mask is not theater.
Very good.
There you go again with the theater. I'm telling you, it's like getting yelled at by your grandfather listening to that guy.
Well, now let's go into the...
if your grandfather was from Brooklyn.
Right. Let's go to the North Carolina thing that you had pulled up there, charities and fundraisers. North Carolina. Yeah. And let's punch in EcoHealth Alliance.
Here?
Next down. Okay. And let's hit that. And let's go down the page. Document filings. All right. Initial charity. September 21st. Yep. 2004. Articles. All right. Now, this is a Commonwealth of Massachusetts form. And look what it says. This corporation is organized for the purpose of conserving threatened wild species.
Yeah.
Right? And their habitats in partnership with local scientists and environmentalists around the world and in furtherance thereof. But you see, everything is modified by the opening sentence. This corporation is organized for the purpose. It doesn't say purposes.
Saving animals.
It doesn't say purposes.
Yeah.
It says purpose. Of conserving threatened wild species. So are humans wild? I don't think so.
I know some.
I don't know enough of them.
They're crazy.
But you know what I mean? Yeah. I think if you look at the construction of the sentence, right, they're specifically thinking here about non-humans.
Animals that aren't in zoos or your living room.
Right, exactly. But they have to be threatened as well. So you can't be monitoring bat populations to have a natural virus to figure out how to make it more lethal to humans would not seem to fit into your purpose.
They could protect rats on 7th Avenue, though. They're threatened. It's like, give me your money.
Right.
Should steal a Big Mac.
But everything in here, in this first section, is modified by the introductory sentence, right?
Yes.
And it says, to do all other things convenient or proper to the conduct, promotion, operation, and attainment of the purposes herein specified, or which at any time may be incidental to such purposes, all is set forth in these articles of organization. So if the IRS were not watching porn, they would look at these articles and say, fuck these. I mean, these are way too general. This is total wiggle room, this D. You have not said anywhere in here that the intent is to be a federally tax-exempt organization. You can do all of this stuff and be non-tax exempt, right?
Right, because the government's really not in charge of taking care of wild animals.
Right. And you're supposed to, if you want to seek federal tax exemption and attain it, you have to make clear by the articles, the organizational test, by the articles, that you were formed to be a federally tax-exempt organization. This, to me, I'm no lawyer, but this doesn't work, and it certainly does not allow you, in the guise of being a federally tax-exempt, to weaponize a natural virus to try to kill people.
I don't understand how that could ever be taxed. And this is literally like if these guys at McDonald's, instead of asking you to buy them coffee, were like, Charles, can you give me $400 to purchase a gun so I can shoot you?
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
Or at the Bada Bing Club with Tony Soprano, right? You're sitting there going, hey, Tony, I got an idea. We'll do a foundation. We already got one of those. We'll do another one. It's just nuts.
That is I think that's the naval base. Naval Observatory or something. I forget, but that's a real thing, the Bada Bing Club. But it's not called Bada Bing, I don't think.
Well, let's keep going and see in this articles if they redeem themselves. This is a form, page 2. Well, let's slow it down. Okay, it says, the corporation has one member, the powers of which are set forth in the bylaws. Now, this you would fail on your face here. You're trying to set up a publicly supported entity. It can't have just one member.
Is that just one person?
Well, it's going to be the predecessor operation. You're going to see Attachment A, Article 4, the bylaw. This is a cut and paste job.
It's also not very easy to read.
Yeah, and when you look this up, this Victoria Mars was in my class at Yale, and she's the Candy Mars. She's
right.
She's
M&M Mars. That's big money.
Right. No, she's a multi-billionaire. And as a guess, I knew her a little bit in college, but not well.
Was she always eating candy?
Well, no, as a guess, who, if you're a billionaire and you're like riding horses or whatever, who wouldn't say, you know what, let's protect threatened animals in the wild. I like to go on safari. What the hell? We'll do that. It makes sense. And that they would try to do this. But do we see an Attachment A? There we go. How's
it look?
All right. All right, so it's saying nothing will be done that's inconsistent with 501c3. This is not written by lawyers who want to be very careful that the thing actually becomes approved by the IRS legitimately. This seems to be, to me, a cut and paste job. I'm amazed that Victoria would allow her name to be involved with something like this.
I just wonder if she even knows.
As a guess, she does, or she signed it.
Huh. Charles, we have a comment here from Blue Sky saying that the World Wildlife Foundation is heavily involved in acquiring Western water rights.
Yeah, that's different than this foundation. The World Wildlife Foundation this is the Wildlife Trust. Different.
They also sued the wrestling people to get that WWF.
Yeah. So to me, this doesn't look very strong here. And
people want to know if Patricia Mars has teeth.
No, Victoria Mars. I don't know
whatever.
about Patricia Mars.
Sorry, Patricia was asking if Victoria has teeth.
Probably.
But that's a lot of candy.
Yeah. Right, and this is, generally these things get signed. It doesn't seem to be signed.
It's effective. Well,
no, but we've seen examples of this in Massachusetts for the Clinton Foundation. If the papers for this are worse than the papers for the Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS,
it's not good.
That's not good. All right, so let's go into the adjacent one over at the top there to New York, and let's see if we have the 1023 in New York for EcoHealth Alliance.
Which one?
To the next. Sorry, yeah. Let's punch in EcoHealth Alliance in here and see what we have.
They are in New York, right? We were just over
there.
Yeah,
we walked by their former office place. EcoHealth Alliance.
Or something like that.
Yeah. And again, there's been a lot of reporting about the grants that went to this EcoHealth. But here you see there's a theoretical IRS determination letter, which it isn't. We won't pull it up yet. But there's no application for federal tax exemption. Okay, so
how does the IRS allow all these mistakes across all these different filings?
Well, again, I think if we get back to this issue of the IRS revelations about how the very rich don't pay any taxes, this is the department within the IRS that could put a chokehold on the billionaires. I mean, we have Joe Biden bite me wants to, if he can get the cicadas off his neck, he wants to get a whole bunch of money together so you can hire 87,000, which is a lot of people in the IRS to go chase rich people, when in reality, all you need to do is go through the records that are there, not only of the charities, but of the limited number of investigations which in theory have been taken out against the charities, like in the case of the Clinton Foundation, and say, how come you didn't see this in 2001 to 5? Who are the people who missed all this? Who missed all this at the Gates Foundation? Who's missing stuff at the Pew Memorial Trust, or Pew Charitable Trust, and the other ones that we've gone through today, the American Conservative Union Foundation? Could it be that the department in the IRS that's supposed to oversee charities has instead figured a way to have the people around it make a lot more money for their families
by not investigating?
Not investigating, right. And then gumming the works up. And what are the potential dread consequences of decades of going lax against these crooked charities? I mean, when you're out there and you're trying in the business world, let's say I'm trying to convince you as the CEO of U.S. Steel to hire me at Dillon Read as opposed to Joe Blow over here at Goldman Sachs. I mean, I can make an argument and Joe Blow can make the argument, but fundamentally, maybe Goldman Sachs is going to be better than Dillon Read, maybe not. But there'll be a contest to get, people will go and say, Jason, hire us for this reason. Joe Blow will say for that reason. You'll think about it and you'll say, no, I want to hire my wife, or I want to hire my uncle, or I want to, whatever reason you're going to hire. But there's a contest. In a charity, on the other hand, if you're saying, all right, you go to Gates and let's say he's a dunce.
He is.
All right. Okay. He is a dunce then. So you got to, Bill, look, get your head out of the swimming pool. You got to get all these hookers, bathing suits out of here. You got to clean this pool up before the kids come home from nursery school. And Melinda's not going to be very happy about this. But once you get that whole place cleaned up, we got a scam for you. And Bill will say, scam? I'm all into scams. Scams are awesome. So you explain to Bill this foundation that you're going to say you turned over this appreciated stock to the foundation, but it's really just giving it to yourself because you are still going to control the foundation and you control the stock. And now we have this gigantic pool of money that we can use to bribe politicians around the world. We'll say, we're not bribing you, Bill. We're just giving you $150 million in these grants to charities that don't exist that you say you run. And by doing that for $150 million, you're not going to sick the government on us to break up our monopoly. And you're also going to use Tony Blair and other people around the world to protect me. Okay?
I got to tell you something, Charles.
It's not a good look.
I don't want any advice from this guy about what to eat or drink while he's on his way to his breast reduction surgery.
Yeah, it's just not. I mean, you would think a guy this rich, who's in the public eye as much as he is,
at least get a better shirt.
Right. I mean,
forget about being in shape.
He's wearing, the Confederate gray and washed up Union blue jeans.
It's just not a good look at all. Charles, rather than doing all this stuff with the IRS, and that's obviously going to be pretty expensive to hire 87,000 people. I think Joe Biden could just become a sponsor on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. He could watch these shows and just go after some of these schmucks. Oh, wait a minute. He's one of the schmucks. But they're not going to do that.
Well, yeah. I mean, the Bidens have run numerous fake foundations.
Right.
That seems to be the rage. I wonder when Kamala Harris is going to set up her foundation.
I think that there already is, isn't there?
I don't know.
Well,
but honestly, I think this whole area, on the one hand, of government spending out of control because we can borrow as much money as we want right now because we've pushed interest rates to the floor, and demonizing people who create legitimate businesses, suggested that they're the real problem, What's this?
The Knee Pad Foundation.
Easy, Jason. Easy.
Sorry.
She doesn't play basketball.
It's rollerblading. I don't know. I just put in Kamala Harris Foundation and this came up.
Well, can you put in quotes, Kamala Harris Foundation?
Sure.
Makeup tutorial.
Wow.
It's harsh. How about putting in, just for the fun of it, is there
foundation like the makeup. That's funny.
Yeah.
She should create the foundation to give makeup to poor children.
Is there a scam foundation or a Scam-I-Am foundation, just for the hell of it?
I don't know.
Well, we'll find out. Let's see if Google tells
This
us.
is like bowling for foundations.
Yeah.
Scam foundation?
Yeah. There you go.
It's on Twitter. What is this? On Twitter. Builders of self-regulating anti-scam systems.
You could hit scamnetwork.co.
Nah, I don't know. Yeah, that
reached.
doesn't seem... I don't know if we want to be clicking on things that are telling us that they're scams.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of interesting information today, Charles. Anything else we wanted to touch on?
Well, I think we should wish Madam Vice President and Bozo the Clown good luck on their foreign travels. I think
Watch out for cicadas.
poor Kamala Harris. I mean, talk about a trip that didn't go well. I mean, your plane takes off and returns to base. Yeah, I got an idea. I'll just pass out cookies at me.
But I don't understand something. I mean, it's not like she's flying Northwest. This is the Vice President of the United States. Isn't that plane totally checked out before she even gets on it?
I wouldn't know. I mean, it is a serious problem with it. It's not like one or two bugs. I mean, it's trillions of bugs.
Oh, the cicadas were what
I
brought
don't know
them
if
back?
that's another. But Joe's trip to Europe, I mean, in the United States, I think the corporate-owned media has pretty effectively been bought off. But across Europe and the international press, particularly in the UK,
the government's own it. It's the BBC.
well, but the reporters are more difficult to control. In the reporting contingent is, for example, very sour on America for opposing the climate accord and going too slow on climate. And here's Joe Biden really just not going very hard about anything except protecting Hunter.
This is a reporter that they control in Europe.
Right. But I'm saying there are a lot of reporters, though, who will ask the impudent questions. And there are many different cross-currents in Europe that would be difficult for a competent president to address in a press conference.
Do you know where I could find one of those?
Yeah.
Because I'm not really too sure. Actually, one other thing worth mentioning while we're still live here, Charles.
That's interesting.
That is interesting. Why is it not CS the truth? Huh. Why is Rumble not finding that? That's so weird. So when I'm searching for CS the truth, it's not finding it. But if I go to Rumble, rumble.com/user/ wow. Why is it more difficult to find crowdsource the truth on Rumble than it used to be? But it is working as far as live streaming goes. So that's cool. People can join us on rumble.com/user/crowdsource, /CS the truth.
Well, and one quick thing to say. Actually, is today the 9th?
Yeah.
So I started work 41 years ago today.
Wow.
June 9th. And I started this day in Washington Square Park, having my coffee and watching the world go around. And I'm telling you, the story about what happened the other night where people were calling in Washington Square Park, the cops, there's a 10 o'clock p.m. curfew, and people were referring to Asian cops in a derogatory term and then mouthing off that they can't be racist because they are African American. It's just you're down there in the park, and if you go there regularly, you see really this same collection of hooligans,
right?
Pestering, and particularly they try to find people who look smaller and won't put up, will just give in and won't they'll cower and they'll just give them a few bucks. But the degree to which that park is filthy, and I think the full-time workers who are overpaid, probably they're unionized, highly paid people, are supplanted today. I knew this, but I saw the many good-natured volunteers who come in and do the work for free, so that the overpaid public sector workers don't have to do much, and the park is all just filthy, garbage everywhere, and there are all these signs up saying, don't use wheeled vehicles, and then people come slamming through on skateboards and slamming through on bikes.
It's become a skate park.
Yeah, and it would seem to me that, particularly because there are so many little kids in this park, that you take a 150-pound waif on a skateboard out of control into a little 30-pound 3-year-old.
I'm more worried about old ladies.
And old ladies, exactly.
Or old men. You break your leg when you're that age, and it's going to ruin the rest of your life. And you're some 19-year-old schmuck on your skateboard. You don't care.
Right. So before we hear about how New York City is going to have some new $800 million plan or $2 billion plan.
They're planning a concert.
Yeah. That's spelled C-O-N, of course. Concert. But it's a constant concert. Again, we don't say enough about the art department, but yet another great example to add to the work in production. Yeah.
This concert, for New York, they're just like, oh, it's back. It's so funny. Not funny, actually, but there was a Cuomo, he had some commercial or whatever to come to New York. And like you and I go out there, we're using I think about an 18 millimeter lens, which is super wide. So it's like, wow, look at all the bums and garbage. This commercial is like super tight lens on everything. It's like, here's the face of the Statue of Liberty. Doesn't it look great? Come to New York.
Exactly. Ignore the garbage.
Anyway, Charles, with that, I will thank all of the sponsors that make this show possible and ask people who are watching who aren't yet sponsors to consider becoming a sponsor on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. More exciting changes underway for the Crowdsource the Truth video server that currently provides sponsor-exclusive content to subscribers on Subscribestar, and I am in regular contact now with the technical support department at Patreon, who are attempting to resolve a bug that will allow that server to work there as well. A lot of exciting features that I'll be announcing soon, so get on there now. Oh, and I have another show coming up tonight. Very special guest, Dr. Stephen Greer, who is super into, what do they call it now? Unexplained aerial phenomenon and all this stuff. Weren't they supposed to tell us something about, when was that? June?
By the end of June.
Okay. So Dr. Stephen Greer will be with me later tonight. Don't miss that. Larry Klayman is personal friends with him. So Larry's bringing him on the show. And